That's good. All right. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. So, to add a little bit of context to this,
Thank you, Jen.
there are female heroes in the Greek world, but it is not a common thing, just like it is not as common to have female heroes in the Marvel Universe or turn that off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
And so there are certain stipulations that come along with this. And I think this is an interesting thing to ponder, this concept of creating female heroes among male heroes, right? And so for the ancient Greeks, a hero was someone who was male, descended from a god, most likely, usually somehow very, very wealthy, right? Usually related to a king or a queen or something like that, and then did adventures, went on adventures. And that's what it meant to be a hero, was someone who was wealthy and had this prestige already, and then, As a matter of fact, it talked about like being large. So if a Greek hero would meet another Greek hero, he would say, I know you're a hero because you're very tall. And if you think about all the other poor people who were not so tall, it would be easy to recognize people who are rich because they'd be well fed. So this is kind of what the male heroes were for the Greek world. So female heroes and amazing female characters have different stipulations put upon them. And that's really what I want to talk about, because I think in some ways that's very much related to the origin of female superheroes in American culture. I'm mostly going to hang around talking about the movies, related to the movies, because more people are familiar with the movies. Plus, the Marvel Universe, if you start reading comic books, or if you've read comic books, they're so convoluted in the way that, because you have different timelines, and then you have different characters, and then there are iterations upon iterations. So it gets fairly complicated fairly quickly. So I'll concentrate on my expertise, which is more of the Greek background. So just to give you some context of these stories and the Greek world in which they existed, it's important to know that Greek myths did not come from the time in which they were written. The Greek myths come from an earlier time. And so we see these the people in these Greek times, but we don't have things in writing. So this is a fresco from Knossos, and what I love about this fresco, it's so amazing, is that you see how there's a dark person in the center, and there are two white people on either side of the bull. And then if you're at all curious what they're doing with the bull, it's kind of just mind-blowing. What they would do is run at the bull, grab a hold of the horns in front of the bull, and then as the bull crosses them up in the air, they would do flips and then land on the back of the bull in some ways, not always though, and then do more flips off the back of the bull. It was like this celebration that they did in Knossos, and then also that brought it into the mainland, into Greece, into Peloponnese. So you see, and typically you might think, oh, well, what's the distinction between the dark and the light? And the distinction is that men were dark and women are light. So you can see not only are they in this context together, but women are in this public demonstration of physical prowess. All right. So they're not just priestesses. They're not just in this segregated kind of part of the community. They are here participating in a physical activity, right? Okay, so another example, and this is a little bit later, this is a Mycenaean fresco. You can see these two women are driving their own chariot, which, that might not seem like such a big deal today, but if you go into ancient Greece, I mean, think about driving in Saudi Arabia. For women, it's not something that they it's not something they're allowed to do. So this is where all of our myths really come from, this Mycenaean and pre-Mycenaean time period. And although they spoke Greek, they didn't write anything down. Well, I shouldn't say they didn't write things down, they did write things down. As a matter of fact, this is an example of how they wrote things down. This is Linear B. And Linear B was a syllabic script, meaning that it had all of these different symbols are syllables, right? So la has a different symbol from le, has a different symbol from li, has a different symbol from la, etc. All right, so there are many more symbols, but Michael Ventris in 1956 decoded this, and he was able to read it. And everyone was so excited because they thought, now we're going to read about the Greek myths in the original time that these things happened. This is so amazing. So they sat down to translate all these tablets, and they found out that they were being used to write taxes. These were all donations and taxes paid to the temples. Like, so-and-so sacrificed 100 oxen to the god Dionysus, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, check, and then you check it, maybe April 15th, I don't know. But the whole point is, it's not used to write down something that we would think is exciting, but maybe for them it was more exciting. So just to give you some context in which this is happening, so this is a map of Greece. I kind of don't want to assume that everybody knows where Greece is, but so here, Asia Minor, Turkey, and then we have Knossos is down on Crete. So the Cretans, and this is a whole nother talk, the Cretans weren't Greek. So that's a whole nother thing that's just absolutely fascinating to me. So the Cretans aren't Greek, and here are the Mycenaeans in this area. And they sort of move into towns that had been populated by the Minoans until later. So then they all live here, and then there's this sort of, lots of stuff goes on, and the people who were the ruling parties are gone, and these become city-states. And city-states is exactly what you would think it is. It's a city that's a state. So it has its own form of government. There's a nationality for the people who feel, they feel a certain way about themselves when they live there. And then there are heroes that exist for all of these towns because they did have royalty about whom they're telling these stories. And so those people live there, and then they become the myths of legend. So Heracles probably was a real guy. Theseus, same thing. Probably was a real guy. Whether he did all the stuff that people say he did, I'm not really sure, but he was a guy, all right? And so all of these places are involved. I'm going to refer to a couple other things. So Boeotia is up here, and then Arcadia is right here. And then going up into northern Greece and into Thrace, up along as we move towards Troy, just to give you a concept of what we're talking about. Now, that is, Linear B was or is Greek, and so is this language. This is the first example of Greek being written as we know it today, ancient Greece. Greek. So this is the text, and you can see the text up at the top, and this is Nestor's cup. It says, I am Nestor's cup, I'm wonderful to drink from. Anybody who drinks from this is going to see glorious Aphrodite. So you know what I mean? It's like typical frat boy kind of to-go cup. So the letters that are used to write Greek are Phoenician, and then they take on a more Greek sort of tone to them as they're used and used and used some more. But it's still the same language. But now we're having people write things. And so this is that archaic period that I focused on, the political climate that Josh talked about. So the people who are writing about women during this time, it's not, powerful women jumping over the backs of bulls and how strong they are. There are guys like Hesiod who are writing about what a curse women are to mankind, like just a curse on all mankind. And so Pandora opens up Pandora's box or the jar, and she creates all the terrible things that come out of the jar. So there's just some awful kind of ways that this is described by Hesiod in Works and Days. So, toward in line 90, as an example, for ere this, the tribes of men lived on earth, remote and free from ills and hard toil and heavy sickness, which bring the fates upon men. For in misery men grow old quickly. But the woman took off the great lid of the jar with her hands and scattered all these, and her thought caused sorrow and mischief to men. Then it says, like, only hope remained. And then he says, but the rest, countless plagues, wander amongst men, for earth is full of evils and the sea is full. Of themselves diseases come upon men continually by day and by night, bringing mischief to mortals silently, for wise Zeus took away speech from them. So is there no way to escape the will of Zeus. You know, and he also talks about how how Epimetheus took the gift, and the gift being Pandora, whose name means all gifts. And then when the evil thing was already his, he understood. All right, so that's Pandora and all her kind, which is a little rough. So then we have this guy, Simonides of Amorgos, who wrote his poem Women in 650 BC, well, around then. So in this poem, women are compared to all sorts of different animals. And these animals, we're not like looking at like, oh, like a horse, like so pretty. And it's more of like in a bad way. So, for example, one type is from a pig, a hairy sow whose house is like a rolling heap of filth. And she herself, unbathed in unwashed clothes, reposes on the shit pile, growing fat. Another type, the gods made from a fox, pure evil and aware of everything. This woman misses nothing, good or bad. She notices, considers, and declares that good is bad and bad is good. Her mood changes from one moment to the next. There's so many animals to compare women to. One type is from a dog, a no-good bitch. So that's good. Man can't stop, this is one of my favorite parts. A man can't stop her barking, not with threats, not, when he's had enough, by knocking out her teeth with a stone. And not with sweet talk either, even among guests. She'll sit and yap. The onslaught of her voice cannot be stopped. So he goes on and says, she's like, there's one like the ocean. Another loathsome, miserable type is from a weasel, undesirable in every way, uncharming, unalluring. She's sex-crazed too, with any man who climbs aboard her will get seasick. And she steals from neighbors and from sacrificial feasts. Another is a horse, but she takes too many baths. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The worst is like a monkey. So that's bad too. The only one that's nice is from a bee, and that's because she takes care of the house and makes sure that everything's running smoothly. So, yay bees. All right. So you can see how if the stories are created in this time when women have maybe some more rights and maybe a little bit more respect, but they're being written by this time, in the archaic period when women have a little bit less respect. There's a little bit more, of putting them down. There's a difference in that. But the thing is, we see differences. When we think about the way that stories are told, they change over time. So I don't know if any of you have ever seen some of the old Wonder Woman. It's from the TV show from the early 1980s, but this is Linda Carter on the right. So she played Wonder Woman. So, here riding their horses, in the Amazon wilderness. And of course, this is this modern Wonder Woman on this side. The warriors who look more, I would say, capable of the war thing. So Amazons have been talked about forever, right? This story that was created with Wonder Woman is not a new story, and these stories are old. So these patterns of, the horseback riding and the coming in contest with different cultures and with men in particular is something that happens a lot. So you can see consistency through all these stories. And what I'd like to focus on are just some of the ways that women are powerful in Greek stories, but also the conditions under which they can be powerful. So these distinctions that they need to have in some ways to have this extraordinary power is something that we can sometimes see in modern superheroes, female superheroes, like these sort of restrictions on their abilities, or maybe little footnotes on their character. It goes along with the way that they perform as a hero. So the hyper-sexualization is fairly well known. I mean, comic books covers are really good at the exaggerated features of men and of women, really, right? So so we see that same hyper-sexualization in the ancient world. The idea that they're foreign, that somebody has to come from another place to have this kind of power, especially if it's going to be a woman, she has to be foreign. And that's in the ancient world, and in some ways in some of the modern stories as well. Using magic is a way that a woman can be powerful, and so that's something that happens. Showing female exceptionalism, and that'll take a little bit more explaining, but we'll get to that. And then also seen as a tomboy, right? You know, that concept of existing in male spaces and acting like a man. All right, so this concept of hypersexualization, it might seem like, oh, the first time that this ever happened was on the cover of some Wonder Woman comic book. But it's not like that. As a matter of fact, the 9th labor of Heracles had him go get the girdle of Hippolyta. All right, so going to get the girdle of Hippolyta isn't like, oh, I'm going to, you know, go to her house and I have to battle with her. The girdle is specifically a reference to sex. So comparable to like, oh, you know, if you go have sex with that girl and get her panties, that would be the proof that you had sex with her. So that's the concept. Like, he has to go have sex with Hippolyta, and that's one of his labors, which, you know, like that means something. But it also says something about her, right? The sexual being that she is. And of course, the bonding together of the women of the Amazons around her is very important as well. As you can see in this picture, you can always tell it's Heracles because he's wearing his signature lion skin, right? And he's fighting with the club, which is something else. And then you have these two Amazons, probably, you know, Hippolyta down below being beaten down by Heracles, all right? So, and there are other ones as well, and you see them here. Here, Hippolyta lying down, and all of the line of the Amazons coming toward Heracles to avenge the death of their queen, right? This one, I like this one just because of the different ways that women are in the, like they're in that shot. And I think it's interesting too, just looking, especially this one, looking at these and seeing how similar they are to the cover of a comic book. So if you ever look at the cover of a comic book, there is this thing called Synchronic Illustration, right? So there are several things happening from the story at one time in the picture, right? And so that's something that happens here with these Greek vases as well. And then this one, I like this one because you can see here they aren't trusting that the viewer knows the name of Heracles because it's written next to him, and then also Hippolyta's name. And then you can see too that the name is backwards. Does anybody know why the name's backwards? It's not because the slides flipped. Anybody know why? Yeah.
Transfer? Was the image transferred?
Oh, no, but that's a very good guess. Yeah. Yeah. So does anybody know Hebrew? Maybe? Yeah. So what?
Oh, well,
no, you know?
I know how to say mother and father, Ima and Abba.
Okay, so do you know anything about how it's read, though?
That's read right to left.
Right. To left.
Yes.
Yes. I know. I'm just, okay. So yeah, it's read opposite of how we read English. And so opposite of how Greek was read as well. And so that's why this is backwards, because Phoenician script was written backwards. And so there's this time that Greek is written backwards because Phoenician was written backwards. So I also like this because she is so big in this picture. So it's almost like she's doing double time as both a sexual figure and a monster, like a giant or something. All right, and then this one I like because there is more of a sexuality being shown here, as far as if you look down and see his hand on her arm, there is that confusion between whether he's having consensual sex with her and whether it's a rape. So, but there's also a lot of the way that the story is told is that Heracles, when he goes to see Hippolyta, he tells her, you are my 9th labor, and she says, well, what are you supposed to do? And he says, I'm supposed to get your girdle, which means, like, and she's like, oh, well, all you had to do was ask, and she has sex with him willingly and hands over, in this picture you can see she's handing over her girdle. But what happens is the other Amazons hear her having sex with Heracles, and so they're angry. And when they start approaching the tent, Heracles gets mad at her, thinking that she gave him up to the Amazons, and so he kills her and then continues to war with the other Amazons. So there is this sort of sexual story that's going on at the same time as like the whole conquering hero story as well. Now, as far as Wonder Woman and the connection to the Amazons, it's coming through. It kind of has a sexy backstory too. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but William Marston was the inventor of Wonder Woman, and this is in 1941. And he also had, he was a psychologist, and he sort of was part of the invention of the lie detector. So if you know anything about Wonder Woman, she has the magic lasso and telling the truth. It kind of makes sense, that aspect of it. But he had sort of this connection to, I would say sexually adventurous kind of ways of interacting with the world. And so there is a very sexual part of Wonder Woman and the way that she is shown. And this carries through to the modern day too. I mean, even if we have, you can see the difference between Linda Carter, and this is like kind of like a pin-up poster. You see that, and then is it Gal Gadot? I always have a hard time like wondering if I'm pronouncing it right.
Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
Yeah.
Gal Gadot. All right. So, but anyway, you can see that the sort of the way that she's played up, and she was to be fair, she was a lingerie model before she became an actress. That being said, I have to say it's a fantastic movie, and I think she does it very well. But this concept of the hyper-sexualization of that photo, that moment that's showing the female character. And I don't know if you ever saw any of the memes that came out of this, or this meme. Has anybody ever seen? I should have put some of the ones. So this is probably one of the most ridiculous, most recent ridiculous covers from this is Spider-Woman. And there were all these pictures of people trying to replicate this pose of her on the right. Typically you get the large breasts and the tiny waist, and that's something that's that hyper-sexualized figure on the cover of a comic book. But this one sort of, this wins awards. All right. So, but anyway, that's sort of something that's associated with. But there's always, there always is the romantic love, sexual tension that's going on with the characters. Whether it is someone that she's interested in or whether it's someone she's not interested in. And this is what we see in a lot of the movies. And we see that in the ancient world as well. So this is just an amazing story. The sexuality that's going on here is crazy because this is Penthesilea. She's another queen of the Amazons, and the guy that she's fighting against, is Achilles. And the story is that Achilles and Penthesilea fighting for Troy and Achilles for the Greeks, are fighting on the battlefield, and they're evenly matched. And as they fight, he falls more and more in love with Penthesilea. And so, although it seems weird to say that this is sort of a sexual, loving sort of thing that's going on, it's supposed to be, right? So seeing that he looks down into her eyes and realizes that he's in the process of killing this woman as he's falling in love with her. All right, so you can see that with the two of them, and you can see this mostly because her face is completely exposed and his being somewhat covered, but you can still see him a little bit. So that's kind of an amazing one. This is another shot of this is Penthesilea and being defended by another Amazon. And here, and this one is really great because look at her leg. So this is Achilles killing Penthesilea. There are a couple things that are about her that show that she's an Amazon. So the cap, the pointed cap, is something that shows also that she's foreign, and that bow is showing that she's like that. But look at how her leg extends toward him. It's not as bad as the Spider-Woman pose, but it's definitely not something that would be happening naturally. It's drawing out that line, for the beauty aspect more than anything else. All right, and then this one, you can see it. She's more, he is more aggressive, and then she is sort of this more of a victim in this painting. And just a little bit closer. Now, this isn't the only. There are two Amazon queens that are shown like this, and then we go on, and there are more Amazon queens. So this is Antiope, and she is being stolen here by Theseus and Pirithous. And so Theseus decides that he's going to get married to her and steals her away from the Amazons and does, and marries her, and they have a son together named Hippolytus. And so here you see that sort of like idea, like this is the kind of woman, the powerful woman that I want to be the mother of my children, and that's why, taking them away. But that foreign aspect too, that you have to sort of go outside of your own culture to find a woman who's like this, right? And so the foreign aspect of the Amazons is something that the Greeks, particularly the Athenians, latched onto. So here you have a picture of the fighting against the Amazons. So can you tell me something about the Amazons' outfits? What do you notice about the way that they're dressed? They have pants on, right? Greek men don't wear pants, let alone Greek women, right? But here they are wearing pants, not all of them, but wearing pants, and that was something that they were sort of talked about. Like, this is a symbol of being foreign. Having clothes on is a very foreign concept to the Greeks, really. If you've seen enough Greek classes, you know it's a very foreign concept. All right, so you have this sort of very foreign way of dressing, and then that sort of played up in this, what's called the Amazonomachy, this battle that happens between the Athenians and the Amazons after Antiope is stolen. And so in this Amazonomachy, you have all of the Amazons, coming after Theseus, trying to get Antiope back, and they fail, and they're defeated, but having this battle played out. Now this scene became very, very popular because this is symbolic of everything that it means to be Greek, right? Versus outsiders, versus the hoi barbaroi, right? So the Persians or the Boeotians or any of those foreign entities are symbolized by this other group, the Amazons. And then to just drive home the concept of how different they are from the Greeks. They're dressed in, they're wearing pants, and the women are powerful, and saying maybe even too that the men are weak. And the Athenians found this so important that it ended up on the metopes on the western side of the Parthenon. You can see these are different scenes. These are the metopes here. They're not in great shape, but these are these scenes of the Amazonomachy. So you can see this too if you think about in the Wonder Woman movie, for example. You have this sort of played out as this very foreign way of fighting. The Amazons are fighting with their own technology. They're fighting in their own sort of way of dress or undress. And here we have the Germans fighting with more clothes on and with weapons that are more advanced. So this sort of foreign equals permission to be stronger. Well, maybe it does. I mean, I think it is, that there's sort of this permission to be stronger than women in the civilized world, You know, like women in the civilized world wouldn't do this. They wouldn't become strong in this way. So there are other sort of foreign aspects for these Greek female heroes that we see played out. For example, with Medea. So Medea is another foreign person who is very, very strong and powerful. And she has her power because of her magic. She is a witch. And she is related to the god of the sun, Helios. So she has even more sort of powerful aspects to her, beyond just her magic and her foreignness. So when Jason goes to get the golden fleece, he is helped by Medea, and she's tricked by Aphrodite and Eros, in this picture you can see it, into falling in love with Jason. And so it's when in this story of Medea, it's technically, you know, we always sort of draw out the fact that she killed her children. You know, that seems to be the main part of her story, but it really isn't. She is a Greek hero who was traveling with the rest of the Argonauts, and they only survived because of her help. If she hadn't been there with them, they wouldn't have succeeded. And so her being there is very, very important, and it's his love that really sort of attaches her to the whole group and makes her betray her own kind. So here you see her helping Jason win get the golden fleece away from the serpent. So one of my favorite scenes from the Argonautica is where Medea defeats Talos. So Talos was this giant bronze robot that ran around the island of Crete 3 times a day and protected it from all invaders. And so the Argonauts try to land on Crete, but they can't because there's this like ultra powerful entity that's protecting Crete, and they can't go on the land. So Medea kind of like tells everybody to step back. She's like, I got this. And she levels her gaze at Talos. And the way Apollonius describes this, she levels her gaze at Talos, and it's like she shoots red laser beams out of her eyes, and it freezes. Talos sort of just freezes, and then he's not able to move anymore. And so this is a Greek vase showing the death of Talos here as he's being just, killed by Medea. So this is the kind of power that she has because of her magic. And but then her magic has negative things as well. She comes back, and here she is next to Jason, coming back to Pelias, and Pelias is like, no, you can't have, I know I said I was going to give you your kingdom back, but that was a lie, so whatever. And so she comes up with this way of helping Jason, but it also hurts Pelias, because she convinces the daughters of Pelias that if they, she shows them this trick where she cuts up an old ram, and she puts the old ram into the potion, and then this young lamb jumps out. And so she's like, you can totally do this, to the daughters of Pelias. So the daughters of Pelias cut up their father, put him in the soup, and they get Pelias soup. So, so she gets kicked out of that area. But her goal is to help Jason. Like, that's how she's allied with him, and this is a superhero. And then until she's not, until Jason betrays her, and as you can see here, ends up mourning over his children after she kills them. So you see the white-haired Jason mourning over his dead sons. And then, pretty awesome scene, she gets to drive away in the snaky chariot of the sun. So this is pretty cool. Definitely a superhero move, but not a good superhero move. More like a Magneto move. Okay, so anyway, but she comes up again and again in different places. So in this scene, Theseus is coming to meet his father Aegeus, and that's Medea standing behind Aegeus. She was helping Aegeus, but then when Theseus, his son, comes into town, she realizes, oh, I don't have any place in this kingdom anymore because, this is his son. So she leaves. But we can kind of see this with the Scarlet Witch in the way, and this is a very important big statement to make, in the way that she's depicted by the Marvel movies, right? In the comics, she is a different character entirely. But I think it's important, with the Scarlet Witch, she is this foreign character. And she she has magic at her disposal, but she's very much a foreigner, and it's repeated just not only because of her accent, but also her backstory, and then also the fact that she was bad, like she was against the rest of the Avengers before she is a good character, before she's helping them. So she straddles those two places. So Apollonius, who wrote about Medea and her laser beam eyes, wrote during the Hellenistic period, right? And his version of Medea is really based on a human being who was just mind-blowing, amazing. So to give you a background for her, she was a Ptolemy, and after Alexander the Great died, his generals took over his kingdom, right? So we have the Ptolemies down in Egypt, and then you have the Antigonid kingdom up in Macedon, and then you have other Greek states and the Seleucids, so Seleucus being huge. So Ptolemy was like this guy who just had this amazing imagination, and Ptolemy Soter is the father, he's the big papa, and Cleopatra is the last. And I love this because, so this is Alexander the Great with the lion on his head, but do you see what Ptolemy gets on his head? Is his headdress? You see it? There's the trunk and the ears. Yeah, so he gets the elephant on his head, which is kind of cool. And you can see his goddess is Athena. So he starts this, the first museum is under Ptolemy, and he has all these libraries, and so into this is born the third Ptolemy, and then Berenike II. So Berenike II was a princess from Cyrene. This is Cyrene here. And her father was allied with the Ptolemies, and her father dies, and her mom was allied with the Antigonids, and so she's like, oh, let's get Cyrus the Handsome to come and marry you. And Berenike says, no, I was supposed to marry Ptolemy, and she gets really upset. So this handsome guy, his name was the Handsome. They called him the Handsome. So the Handsome shows up, and everyone doesn't like him because who likes the Handsome, right? So anyway, he shows up, and nobody likes him except for Berenike's mom, who likes him way too much, and they end up having sex. And Berenike, and this is the way the story is told, who knows if it's true or not, but Berenike goes up into the bedroom and kills her own mother as well as the Handsome, right? And she's like, all right, I'm out. I'm gonna go marry Ptolemy. So Ptolemy was not strong enough to handle Berenike, and she sort of ran the kingdom. And so this is a great mosaic of her. She has, look at those eyes. I can totally see where those laser beam eyes came from, right? And then look at the ship. She has a hat made out of ships. It's just so cool. So there's this kind of this ruling aspect of Medea that I can see in Berenike, but also there's this capacity to have like a place for strong women too. And in the story of the Argonautica, there's also this crazy place where the Argonauts go, and it's called so the Lemnian women, and they're the Stinky Women, which is like a whole nother side story. But anyway, they killed their husbands, and they're ruling the island instead of the husbands. And so this is kind of connected with that Berenike II, and also with Medea and this sort of ruthlessness. But it also gets into the idea of like concept of, and I think Berenike really gets into the idea of female exceptionalism. So within certain spaces, you say, well, women shouldn't necessarily be president, but boy, this one woman, she's special. She's not like other women, so that means she's good. I mean, you see this with other minority groups as well. Oh, well, this, whatever, Muslim, black, somebody, anybody, Hispanic, like somebody is not like others, they're just like, and put in whatever you want to put in. So this happens. So I think the best example of that is this woman. Does anybody know who she is? Yeah, this is Gertrude Bell. Gertrude Bell is amazing. If you ever want to read a great book, is it called Queen of the Desert? Did you read it? Desert Queen? Is it Desert Queen or Queen of the Desert? I can't remember. Anyway, she was sent in by the British Foreign Service to go organize Iraq in 1917. And you can see her meeting with all of the sheiks here, right? And all of the, so these are all people in the middle, all these men in the Middle East who are giving space and time to this woman and are totally okay with it, right? They're sitting in their tents and they're listening to her. But you know what's crazy? She thought women should not have the right to vote. She was very strongly against women having the right to vote. So I think that's kind of amazing because it says, well, like, I can do this, but I'm so different from all other women. I'm like, you know, I'm like a man, and that's kind of what all the other men said too. So, and it's kind of an interesting thing that this happens within cultures like that. So this is Jeannette Rankin. She is the first U.S. Congresswoman. She was elected in an election. The election was in 1916, but she took her place in 1917, before women had the right to vote, which I think is amazing, right? So, so this is, today, you know, only 20.6% of Congress is made up of women. Now, what country do you think first elected a female leader? And by elected, I mean sort of that loosely. So prime minister or president, what country do you think first had a female leader? What do you think? Huh? Any guesses? No. No, Netherlands isn't even in the top 4 or 5. Sri Lanka. Yeah, yeah. So this is Sirimavo Bandaranaike, right? And she is the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka in 1960, right? She is exceptional. The rights of women in Sri Lanka, not so great. But this woman is different from all other women, right? And then Indira Gandhi is the next elected female leader of a country. One could say she's, you know, I mean, because of her relationship to other people, that's why. And then Golda Meir in Israel. So we tend to think of Israel as being fairly modern today, but there are a lot of, like with the traditional Orthodox, this is not the place that women are typically shown, but you know. So Margaret Thatcher is the first Western, typically Western country that has it. So, but this is, my point is that even though India and Sri Lanka don't give rights to women, they have this special place for them within this concept of female exceptionalism. And this happens for the Greeks as well. Within the Greek stories, even though Greek women, like women do not get rights, there's an example of that female exceptionalism. And this is sort of paired up with the tomboy thing, where the woman is shown being in a male context, right? So that male context might be racing, it might be wrestling, it might be hunting, it might be adventuring, all of these different things that, you know, that men can do, but women should not be included, except for this one. This is Atalanta. So Atalanta, there's one name, but there are two kind of stories that are conflated together. One is the Boeotian version and the other is the Arcadian. So she is in all of these male spaces. She is running. So the story about her and Hippomenes falls in love with her, and she says, I will only marry someone who can beat me in a foot race. And so she races all these men, and when they lose, they get put to death. So it's like they really have something, you know, on the line. But anyway, so Hippomenes prays to Aphrodite and gets these 3 golden apples. And then as he's running, he throws these golden apples in front of Atalanta. And she bends down to pick each one up. And it slows her down enough that Hippomenes wins. So this is the Boeotian Atalanta. The other Atalanta, the Arcadian Atalanta, gets a lot more play. So this is her wrestling with Pelias. Pelias wrestles with a lot of women, which is a weird sort of distinction for him. But anyway, so he is wrestling, and you can see in the background, this is at the funeral games for Pelias. Timeline-wise, Greeks, this makes no sense. Because, yeah, you would think that, yeah, but it really doesn't, because Jason got the Golden Fleece, and he didn't meet Atalanta until after the getting the boar, the Caledonia boar hunt, so it just doesn't make any sense. But here she has the boar skin, and she's wrestling with Pelias here. And then here she is at the Caledonian boar hunt. And again, you can see that, I mean, if it weren't written right next to her, Atalanta, you would know that's a female character because she's white and the other characters are black. And then her lover, Melanion. And then they're fighting against the Caledonian boar. Now this is the Francois vase, and you can see, I love this vase because it's this huge thing, and it has all these different stories, but they're all the stories of the greatest contest of all Greek kind. And Atalanta earns a spot on this vase. So you can see her up at the top, up here. Right? And then you can see like the marriage of Pelias, and you can see a lot of this feeds into the story about Achilles. So this is the other side, and you can see the procession of different people, and she's there as well. You can see her up at the top. And then on the side, if you look, this is one of my favorite. This is Ajax taking Achilles off the battlefield. So just some of that you can see in this close-up as well. All right, and then in some versions of the Jason and the Argonauts, Atalanta is allowed to go with the Argonauts, although in Apollonius's version, she is not, because Apollonius says that she would be bad luck. Apollonius makes Jason say that she would be bad luck because she shouldn't go along. So typically, but this tomboy aspect, this female in male spaces, we see this with the new Captain Marvel movie, right? With all of her signs of failure are all linked to these spaces. And I'm not going to give anything away because I'm not that kind of person. But you can see like that sort of place where she is trying to fit into a male world, and she's doing it in whatever way that she does it. But I think this is interesting, because we get this superhero from that story. And I'll come back to it in a second. Just as a side, the word amadzon, too, has that sort of like seeking to be a man quality, because amadzon means breastless, right? So Herodotus makes up this story about, well, they had to cut off their right breast so that they would be better at shooting arrows. There is no proof of that outside of Herodotus. It's just something he says. But if we think about amadzon, breastless, in different ways, we can also think about the body mass and the fat that gets torn away from an athlete. A female athlete, as she becomes more and more fit, will have less and less fat, losing breast tissue, also losing, sometimes not menstruating anymore. So getting to the point where she could not have children if she wanted to, because of that situation. And then there's also a symbolic way of looking at this. If we say breastless as in like, you do not nurse, kind of breastless. Like, you are not a nurturing mother, you are, you're a hero, a female hero. So there's that kind of aspect as well. And we see that with Medea, when she finds that her vengeance is more valuable than her children, there is that, and Jason even says to her, that you're like a lioness, living on the side of a mountain, and you're savage, and you're not behaving the way a mother is supposed to behave. So anyway, you look at all these different sort of heroes in the ancient world, and I don't know if you feel like, for these female heroes, is there one that you're drawn to? I mean, looking at these, do you feel like one or another one of them is sort of something that speaks to you? Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I think Medea is interesting because she has the anti-hero aspects to her personality. So, like, when she's wronged, she does things that are, like, highly immoral.
Yeah.
But that's not something that she's concerned with because she's so confident in her own actions and, like, what she believes.
Yeah. And where her allegiances lie when they lie there.
Yeah. And like she's willing to do things that are difficult, like even if all of society would say like don't do that, she'd be like, I'm gonna do it.
Right.
And like she's also capable of great good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When the way that you worded it made me think about the Marvel. the movie, the Civil War.
I didn't see it.
Oh, you didn't see that one? Well, just like the concept of dividing, that there is not this binary of good and bad, that, you know, that there's nuance within the choices that we make. And I think that that's something that Medea speaks to, because there is nuance. There's a lot of nuance within it. Yeah. So just to end the talk, I kind of wanted to just ask you a question. So all the heroes, these female heroes that I've talked about, they're defined within, you know, not being male heroes, right? So what do you think it would look like to have a female hero that is not defined by not being a male hero?
I mean, my favorite, even though I don't think she's in the comics, is Peggy Carter from Captain America.
Oh, yeah.
Miss Avenger, because she does look amazing while killing all these men.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's a good example, and that's kind of because she is on the side, like you don't really see her. Although she had a series, right?
She did, and it was
Was
great.
it one
And
season or?
It was 2 seasons.
Two
But
seasons.
the first season was great, the second season was really, really bad.
Hmm.
But I like her because she embraces her feminine side while showing them all up.
Yeah. Any other one? I think I just watched the Umbrella Academy, so I think 7. I think 7 is like that. Yes.
Would you consider Hermione from the Harry Potter series to be a female superhero?
Well, I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want to do, but.
No, I asked you.
Well, okay, so for me, if everybody has the same, level of talent, isn't superhero something that would be beyond what is normal? And while she behaves very bravely, I think one of the things that makes her so brave is that it's not necessarily any stronger than anyone else or more capable. She just works really hard. So but maybe you're right. Maybe that's something, the hard working. How many times do you hear about someone who's a superhero because they just work really, really hard? You know? Huh? Batman? Yeah. And he's rich. I think Batman couldn't be Batman without being wealthy. Poor Batman, I've met a poor Batman. On the streets of Philadelphia, I'm pretty sure. Poor Batman. Yeah. But,
Want to know my identity?
Right. It seems here like the women, the superheroes, have the physical strength, but in other cultures or in other applications, women are influential or strong because of their ability to manipulate men.
yeah.
Where do we make the crossover from physical to?
Yeah, to a mental. That's true. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Did somebody over here have their hand up to speak to that? Oh, I thought maybe somebody was going to speak to that. Dante, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it sort of goes to just from what you were saying about the Wonder Woman aspect, where she could play men emotionally, but she was also capable of doing her own thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel if that's your primary, because obviously manipulation is very underhanded and not courageous.
Well, why?
Well, I think it's you're not solving your actions directly. You're not solving your problems directly.
Why do you have to?
Well, I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying it's maybe considered more cowardly than just going for it. So I don't think that's.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
It's
but
just a matter of boldness.
I wonder if that's part of the issue then, is to say, if we're going to classify in a moral way overt actions as being appropriate and good,
Right.
and to use the word underhanded or say manipulative, and that means bad, then maybe that's part of the problem, is that there's a judgment that goes along with manipulation.
Well, when you move from the Greek to the Roman, and you see the role that the women play in the Roman culture, significantly different from the Greek. And then when you see Christianity come along, the role again just changes.
Yeah, although, I mean, Theodora, Justinian's wife, Theodora, that was a prostitute before, she's kind of she's a number. I don't know, she doesn't really fit into that typical Christian way of thinking. Louis, were you going to say something?
Somebody else had a hand up over here though first.
Yeah, Olivia?
What I was thinking, and it's kind of in the background of what everyone is saying, is you have to find what makes you a hero. Like, what is a heroic deed? Is it physically defeating someone, or is it bringing about a massive positive change for a group of people without physically harming someone or physically defeating someone?
Yeah.
So that's like at the base of what everyone is saying. When you can get to what a heroic deed is, then you don't need to have the male definition over here. You don't need to be strong and physically fit and smart and combat ready. Like, you can be conniving, slick. Like Scarlet Witch, she never puts her hands on people, but she does have magic. And she's very slim and light, and she's very feminine. But she is a very powerful person.
Right. I think if you've seen Captain Marvel, there's a scene at the end that I keep thinking about, like, when you were talking about this, I was thinking about, like, not wanting to be in somebody else. Like, if this is not having to prove within that set way that the male has to prove value.
Something that I was thinking about is like kind of off that idea, kind of with like female heroes, sometimes there's more of like a motivation for like their actions instead of just like the idea of like I'm a hero because of like my birthright, or I'm a hero because somebody else told me I'm a hero, and sort of ties into the idea of like being able to find like what makes you a hero, whether it's like a good motivation or bad. We kind of see the example I'm thinking of is Leia Organa from Star Wars. Like, she's motivated by her desire to help the resistance, and she's able to use her skills in that way. When in contrast to like Luke, who sort of is being told by older figures, that you're destined for these things and you're sort of going to be able to find them because of who you are. I mean, I guess she's his twin, so we kind of argue that maybe she's motivated that way too, but that's not her, that's not what the audience and what we're seeing as her main motivation.
Yeah, and even though she is the one with the proven royal blood, as opposed to Luke, who seems to be coming from the poor, that's a trope that comes from the Greek aspect as well. Yeah, Louis?
I noticed you don't have superhero. You say, how do you claim or define a female hero without it being in reaction to the typical definition of male hero? So, I would say that Ruth Bader Ginsburg really falls into my sense of what a female hero is. And I don't think she necessarily is defined in relation to men. She's, I think, defined in relation to her intellect and her tenacity.
I guess, I mean, I think, I agree that she has these things, but I would also say, just as a personal opinion, it is a masculine world, and she's competing by their rules. And it's not that she is selling out herself or doing something, but she's still playing by their rules. And so it's like if everyone said, this is how we're going to fight, and maybe you have really strong legs, right? But somebody says you can't kick anyone. So you have to learn to win in a world where you can't use your legs at all, but you still win. You're still constrained by the rules of the game, I guess. And that's the way I see someone like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I'm not saying she's not a hero. She definitely is a hero, but she is, I would definitely say she's restrained by rules that are established by men. I don't know. And I'm not saying that makes her less of a female, of a hero. But it's certainly, I'm just wondering, what does it look like?
You mean because men kind of wrote the legal codes
Yeah.
within which she,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what
Well,
would
I
it,
guess, you know,
what would it
what
look
are you
like
gonna- what are
if
you gonna
women
do?
wrote
The
the
way culture
codes?
developed, you know.
Yeah.
That's what's there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm not saying, like, this is a purely an intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, let's rise up. Fight the oppressor. No, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, it is interesting because we inherit thousands of years of this kind of cultural development. What would it look like if Minoan society was the one that developed? And that we had this, like, cooperative, you know, women being involved in the formation of laws and things like that. I don't know. Yeah.
In response to this discussion about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one thing you could say about her is that she wrote the legal codes, that she said there are stereotypes enshrined in here that are holding specific groups back, so that's something that she did. I was also thinking about these superheroes and thinking about what Hope said about motivation. A number of these female heroes have motivation and they stay really focused. What do I do to help the Argonauts finish their quest? Or marry Nietzsche, I'm going to stay focused, I'm not going to marry him, I'm going to marry him. But also they have interesting acts of solidarity that seem to keep occurring. There is, I think you said her name is Antiope, who agrees to have solidarity with Hercules, help him.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a politics. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Atalanta. Or the Amazons, solidarity with her, running in to rescue her because she thinks they need that, and even Medea having solidarity with the people that she is with Jason. So motivation and focus and solidarity.
Yeah.
About those.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And I like with the Amazons, I think one of the reasons the Amazons are such a great example are because the Greeks sort of set them up as like being this non-Greek people, and I think it gives them a little bit more freedom to sort of develop in a way that's not Greek. You know, like to give them that sort of bonding that's not a Greek way of bonding, that way of succeeding that's not an Athenian way of succeeding. You know, I think that might be a really interesting part of that. Yeah.
I don't know quite what the commentary is about some of the Star Wars heroines like Rey and Jin, and also kind of John's character, and Tomorrow Never Dies.
It's a great movie. Yeah.
But they're kind of like very practical, kind of tireless outsiders. They kind of, for some reason, aren't really a part of the system, but they're very resourceful, have multiple approaches, and kind of are quite good, but just for whatever reason don't choose to be in the mainstream.
Right.
But kind of like, fend for themselves and be independent. I think there's kind of a neat narrative. I can't quite sum it up, but I kind of like that it's defining this slightly different way.
Yeah.
Kind of like tireless and kind of practicality or range of approaches to things. I can't quite put it seems like something's evolving, but I can't quite put it.
You know, it's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking about Joseph Campbell's, like the hero's journey. And some of the hero's journey is almost imposed on the hero when the hero is continually pushed to the edge of her ability. That she is going to be pushed outside and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and that makes her go through this development to become better, stronger, faster, and then come back around, more clever, coming up with different ideas. And I think, in some ways, being excluded is one of those things that gives you more strength, the capacity for more strength. And but once again, I wonder, like, is that also being defined by standing outside of that mainstream world? I don't know. It's interesting. I want to get back to your question just really briefly because my husband and I were talking about defining heroes and defining strength and physical strength. where he was saying, well, but men are stronger than women. I don't know if anyone saw the news today. There's a rapper, I forget his name, in England. Anybody see this? And he decided to identify as female, and he entered a deadlift competition and won. And so it's kind of like this, he had no, like, it wasn't like he practiced or anything, he just lifted weights as part of his routine. I guess I should say her, but he seemed like he wasn't really identifying as female, like he just was saying that he was identifying. I can't believe I can't remember his name. Oh, you could look up so easily. But anyway, so, you know, there is this sort of like the spoken, the unspoken thing that we don't really, it seems like you're not allowed to say that, you know, that men are physically stronger than women. And so this is something that you have to think about in terms of an adventure or whatever. That the capability of a woman has to be like 50 times stronger than a man because she has to bridge that gap between the natural strength of a woman and the natural strength of a man, like the capability. So we were talking about like, well, what kind of environment would you need where men and women could be physically equal? You know, like what would, and I immediately thought about Amazons in some ways, because Amazons are fighting with bow and arrow. And bow and arrow, especially if you're in a forest or in the mountains or somewhere where you don't have long range like field fighting, like a bow and arrow would be something that would give you an advantage to be able to be just as strong. So there are places that you can sort of talk about the equality, the physical equality between men and women. And then also you have to think about like, what is that natural thing? I mean, I think I talked to, I'm not sure if I talked to you about this, Louis, that Steven Pinker book, The Blank Slate. Oh no. Yeah, the modern denial of human nature. And Steven Pinker talks about how like people don't like to talk about the natural in the qualities with which we're born that just don't change. But anyway, sorry, you were going to say something else, sir?
Any examples of where women had the opportunity to change the rules?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Sparta. Because women in Sparta were given higher social status than women in Athens. Not that they were necessarily politically involved, but there was this kind of respect that a Spartan child was born by a Spartan mother. And so if we want to have, we want to have a strong population, we need to have mothers who are strong and develop that in their kids, so there's this sort of respect. The other thing I was thinking about is among the Persians, and their enemies to the Greeks, to the Athenians, but the Persians had female military leaders. I can't think of her name right now. A naval commander that fought in the Battle of Salamis. I don't know why. It starts with an A. But anyway, so she was Persian, and Xerxes famously said that his men fought like women today, and his women fought like men.
In Lysistrata, did the women get a chance to change the rules?
Well, yes, but no, because it's a joke. Lysistrata is a joke, like the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you can't really count a joke as something that improves anything. Yeah, especially not Josh's jokes.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I'm going to edit this later, by the way.
Okay, good idea. All right. Yeah.
Just a quick comment. There is some interesting research about whether women are better than men at ultramarathons or super long distances.
Yeah.
So there are some really interesting. It's kind of still improving one way or the other.
Yeah.
That might be one category.
Yeah, that's a good.
Without a real end goal and kind of more endurance based and things like that, it's more.
Yeah.
It's still a little bit question.
And more of the strategy. Yeah. So it was just one of those, open questions that we were talking about. Like, well, what would you need to kind of technology or what kind of environment or what kind of contest. Yeah, so, yeah.
Kind of back on the topic of like how modern women superheroes are kind of being portrayed like right now. Arguably, probably, I would say who's sort of kind of up there right now as a female, arguably superhero, more of an anti-hero, is Harley Quinn. She's kind of taken on this role of this sort of ambiguous style hero, which is kind of how DC has taken about portraying a lot of their characters that are women that have originated from a lot of the Batman stories and comics. And so it's sort of an interesting kind of trope, I guess, that we kind of see right now, like in comparison to like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel. We kind of see these like Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy type of heroes who kind of have this morality that's a little more, can kind of go either way, and sort of if that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think is kind of up to our interpretation. But I think maybe it has to do more with like the idea that women are more sort of in our ideas in society are like sort of more capable about going with what their emotions are telling them. And like I said, like if that's a good thing or a bad thing, like going off of like emotional based stuff is sort of, I don't know, I think it's just an interesting, another kind of like popular trope for superhero type women right now that I think is interesting to think about.
I think, I don't know if I would say right now, just because I immediately started thinking about the character of Catwoman. And even going back to like the 50s, 60s television show, the Batman series, you know, Catwoman is like this, but I wonder if emotion is, if it's just emotion or it's also a capacity to see with nuance and not see things in black and white. And I think that might be like to feel an answer rather, you know, and so that sort of connects to what you're saying about emotion. But yeah, that's interesting. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for